Prime Minister David Cameron announces a crackdown on illegal immigrants and a tightening of UK visa rules. But is immigration to the UK any different from that to other developing nations? And are migrants a drain on the economy or a boost to it? Hello and welcome to A Simple Question with me, Phil Rees. In today's show, we'll be asking whether the government's concern with immigration is justified or political scaremongering. Well, before we find out what the people think here on the streets of London, here's a short video clip.
The Conservative government is introducing a series of initiatives that make it more difficult for immigrants to enter the UK. They include measures that make it harder to bring family members to Britain. The government will require families to post a substantial financial bond, perhaps thousands of pounds, in cases of settling a spouse or relative from overseas. In a recent speech, the Prime Minister insisted that all immigrants who want to come to Britain to join relatives must speak English fluently and called on immigrants to learn English before they are eligible for welfare. He also appealed for British citizens to report suspected illegal immigrants to the Border Agency through the Crime Stoppers phone line and through the Border Agency website. Furthermore, changes will be made to the citizenship test for applicants for UK passports to include questions about British history. The Prime Minister said they were changing the citizenship test in order to put British history and culture at the heart of it. In Britain, immigration became a key issue during the 2010 election. After taking office, Cameron's coalition government pledged to reduce net migration from around 200,000 a year to the tens of thousands by 2015. The government also announced a cap of 21,700 skilled workers from outside the European Union per year.
Yes, Britain will always be open to the best and the brightest from around the world and those fleeing persecution. But with us, our borders will be under control and immigration will be at levels our country can manage. No ifs, no buts. This is a promise we made to the British people, and it is a promise we are keeping.
As it tightens its migration policy, the UK is also refusing to share the burden of refugees entering Europe following the unrest in the Arab world. The Home Office said that those seeking international protection are expected to claim asylum in the first safe country they enter, and that those who have no genuine claim to protection should be returned to their home countries quickly. In a statement regarding North African refugees who arrive in Italy, the Home Office said, "Britain has offered Italy practical assistance to help maintain their border controls and asylum processes. We retain the right to not opt into any agreement which will weaken Britain's borders."
A Simple Question is a programme that finds out what the public thinks here on the streets of London. I began today by asking if people knew what percentage of the world's refugees lived here in Britain. And if so, why that number, which is only around 2%, is so low.
How much a refugee population in Britain? Quite a lot, I would say, in the past couple of years, 5 years. I'd say a lot.
Quite a lot. Quite a few, especially in Southall. Southall is overrun by them.
I wouldn't know. Maybe 40%, just a rough guess.
I believe more than the British population. I believe so.
What percentage of the world's refugee population do you believe is housed in the UK?
The global population of refugee, I don't know, 10%?
I wouldn't know, but I would guess probably something like 10, somewhere between 10 and 20%.
I don't think it's as many as we're made out to believe from some of the newspapers, some of the tabloids, I think.
Probably about 25%, is it?
5% tops. I'm not sure exact figures, but quite a large percentage, I would think.
Would it surprise you it's only 2%?
No, actually not. Not at all. Because I think that the whole issue is a little bit overblown in the media, and it's been it's been known that people really think that it's more than it is really.
I'm quite shocked that's so low, actually. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of this subject in the press, and the impression is given out that the country's being overtaken by people from all over the world, but clearly that's not the case.
2% of the world's refugees actually are in Britain. 2% of the world's total refugees. Is that surprising?
Yes, no. I mean, it's got to do with the post-empire and so on. You know, we've had these feelers out all over the world, and so people, they look to Britain, I guess, as being a kind of a civilised place, and it's something to do with, you know, the post-colonial era, definitely, that Britain is and also its situation in Europe, that's kind of important airport, you know, stopping off station on the way to America, whatever, plus the English language, of course.
Personal experience, I think the immigration laws are quite tight. There's probably no way of anybody getting into London, to be honest.
Because we're a very small island, we don't have much geography space compared to most other countries. Europe's a lot bigger than us, and Australia's even bigger than that.
I'm not really sure. Maybe it's the current climate at the moment with the world recession, and I think we're closing our borders now. We're less likely to take in refugees because of the overall perception that a lot of people have in this country that refugees are coming here and having benefits as soon as they come, and housing, and I don't believe that is the case, but I think there are a lot of people in this country that think that.
Well, we're a smaller country, so as a percentage of the world, I'd expect it to be less. Other than that, I'd always thought it was a big target. Obviously, the media always just tells us bad things, so no, I always just thought it'd be more, so I can't comment on why it'd be lower.
Well, those were the views of the public here on the streets of London. Let's now find out what our experts think.
Essentially, international law does oblige states to protect refugees. What it doesn't do is create a right for refugees to enter a country and seek protection. So whilst there is international law that protects refugees, it's not sufficiently protective, and it's easy essentially for states to implement restrictive border controls to prevent the entry of migrants as a group. But of course, amongst this group, there are refugees and those seeking protection. So measures such as visa requirements. Visa requirements are imposed specifically, intentionally on refugee-producing countries. Now, the EU, for example, has a common visa policy of where it imposes visa requirements on 128 countries. Now, this includes the majority of countries in Africa, Asia, and many countries in Central America. Many of these countries have dictatorships. There are clearly refugees who would want to leave those countries and seek protection, Europe and the UK, but cannot do so because of these restrictive measures. Now, states try to justify these measures by saying, well, we're trying to stop economic migrants from coming. But what these measures do is fail to differentiate between migrants on the basis of their motivation for moving, whether that's to seek protection or for an economic status. In the United Kingdom, we actually host less than 2% of the world population of refugees. Interestingly, UK citizens tend to think it's a lot more. Britain is proud of its legacy. It does claim to be proud of its legacy in protecting refugees. But actually, as I've said, it's less than 2%.
The Britain hosts or give home to refugees, a trickle of refugees, of world refugees. As you know, around 72 to 75% of the total refugees, they are in developing world. They are not even, let alone Britain, they are not in developed world, including Europe and America and Canada and other countries. So where there is strife, like Afghanistan, for example, now, the neighboring countries like Iran, Pakistan, those kind of countries are taking the main thrust of the refugees from that country. If there is problem in Palestine, the neighboring countries, as you know, they're taking the main thrust of in the problem in Africa, the African countries, the neighboring countries taking the main thrust of that. General refugees, those who are fleeing from strife and tyranny and persecution, they go first away the country near them, and then from there only the lucky ones, those who can under other pretense, I say that if they disguise themselves as, for example, a visitor, and then they're lucky enough to accumulate money and then come to Britain or countries like that. That's why there is only trickle of the refugee population we accept in here, and it's total about 2% of the world refugee population. Another way to put it, per capita, if you take it, about 1.5 refugee per 1,000 persons living in here. So not even 2 people refugees in here. So it's not a big thing, the refugee population here.
Western countries, including Britain, have taken part in wars in the Middle East, for example in Iraq and Libya, which triggered a mass exodus of refugees. Well, should Britain now be responsible for accepting some of those refugees?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. We should just change how we live in Britain to accommodate these people that have been affected by the war, because you can't go into the countries and do what we need to do and then leave them to fend for themselves completely. So not everybody, a minority, like set up so they can come here, be employed, trained up and then go back.
Only if we have the resources to put them up. If we can't provide for them, there is no point in them coming here.
Of course. I don't know about a responsibility, but kind of an ethical sense of wanting to help out other nations, of course.
Western countries, I mean, including the UK, of course, have participated in wars in the Middle East recently, particularly Iraq and Libya, which have caused a huge number of refugees. Do you think that Britain should have a duty to take some of these people into the country?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you go, you do stuff in other countries and you take responsibility for whatever you do, and like everybody else.
If they've got a reason, like if they're being tormented, yeah, but otherwise no, because they're taking the properties for our families and the council are just giving it to them. It's like my daughter, she's got 4 kids living in 2 rooms. The council won't give her a property. So I feel a bit put back that I was born here and my daughter can't get nothing.
Yes, Britain did have Egypt, I think, and with Libya they intervened in Libya. So I think to an extent, yeah, they should be, and also in their imperial past there's been a lot of upset. So.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, we're all members of mankind, so I'm very much of the opinion that we should help out people who are disadvantaged or in any kind of threat or danger. Yeah, very much so.
Britain has been involved in wars in the Middle East, in Libya, in Iraq, and both wars have created a large number of migrants. Do you think Britain should have an obligation to accept them?
To some extent, Britain aren't on their own in that situation. But yes, I think Britain has something of an obligation, certainly to places like Iraq, because I don't really believe we should have gone there in the first place.
So you think it's wrong that Britain is returning a lot of Iraqi refugee asylum seekers now?
Absolutely.
I mean, I think they have a right to be here. I don't think they should be deported. I mean, if they did some kind of criminal offence, they should be trialled and then maybe deported back to their own country. But other than that, I don't think that they should be deported.
If they're being tormented at home, yes, the government here should allow them to stay here for a while until the conflict is, like in Libya, is cleared up. Then they can go back home and start again.
Well, Britain is now returning Iraqi asylum seekers from the UK back to Iraq. I mean, do you disapprove of that?
I think you've got to have an open mind, and I think they've got to look at each case separately on its merits. I don't think you can just have a broad brush saying that they should just send everybody back. I mean, there are people that perhaps should be looked after and should have the right to stay.
No, I don't think so. They should do things like that. The problem is for the English government, it costs lots of money to organize a flight, organize a doctor, organize food for these people and take it back to the original country.
I don't know, they're trying to get, it's a vote pleaser, I think, to try and get votes from people, and I don't think that it's right, really. I think that we should be compassionate to people.
It depends on their circumstances. If there is no legitimate reason why they need to be here, then yeah, I think that they probably should go. We have 70 million people on a very, very small space.
Do you think the UK should be sending back asylum seekers from Iraq, say?
Well, I think that the big problem is really investigating the cases. There's so much bureaucratic chaos over there, and probably so much corruption, relative corruption, that it's hard to know exactly, who's telling the truth. And if somebody comes with a story and says, "Well, I'm going to be hanged if I go back," or something, who are we to say whether it's true or not? I think actually investigating all these cases is probably extremely difficult. I think maybe you need some laws to start with, to say, look, we need to just curb this a little bit. We can only accept so and so many until we can deal with it. Maybe more rational approach.
Yeah, it's difficult to generalise on that particular question, because there are so many factors that obviously are at play here. I think if people are in genuine fear for their lives and seeking seeking sanctuary in this country, we have an obligation to help them.
Well, that was the view of the public. Now let's find out what our experts think.
Well, my view would be yes, the UK is being harsh. The problem here, again, is the way in which refugee law works. So you have this mechanism that's used by states to justify the return of individuals, and it's called the safe country concept. And states will essentially designate countries as safe according to a number of criteria. Now, they do use human rights grounds, the existence of a refugee protection regime in that country, etc., in order to determine a country safe. It's essentially a label. Once a country is determined safe, then individuals are liable to being sent back. Now, of course, the particular situation you raise of a country being involved in a war, now these countries want to declare those wars won and over. Part and parcel of that is those countries being safe for the return of refugees. So what they will sometimes do is say, well, part of the country is safe, as they have done with Iraq, pass and say, well, we can return individuals to that part of the country, whereas not to other parts. So of course it's not an ideal situation, but this problem, the safe country concept, is problematic. It's endemic to the refugee regime in many countries in Europe, including the UK.
One of the great treaties that Britain becomes signatory to is Geneva Convention, 1951 Geneva Convention. And that treaty, as a democratic country, is a fundamental duty of Britain and countries like Britain, those who are signatories. They should take the refugees, those who are fleeing from tyranny and persecution. In Second World War, pre-Second World War, we know Hitler and other kind of persecution then existed, and the people fleeing from that. In the present time, a new kind of the tyranny and persecution, either Gaddafi regime or Saddam Hussein regime or other regimes, in the world, that they are people, they really show for their democratic principles and on the foundation grounds. They are fleeing from that country. It is not possible for them to stay there, and they would not be protected there. So it is very important. Britain, as a civilized democracy, should take on the people and respect the treaty. In the world, there are 7 billion population we are talking about now. Only 190 million people live outside their own home countries. Only 100. What is the fraction of that? So the people are not footloose. They do not want to leave their own countries. But if, first of all, the people with enterprise, they want to leave their country, they are good. We should embrace them and take them in with enterprise. Those who want to come, develop, and young people particularly want to come to other countries. But those people are also fleeing from tyranny and persecution and strife. There should be also a share of them that Britain should take.
The government is planning to beef up the UK border agency in order to try to control illegal immigration. But should this be a priority for Britain now in the midst of a major recession? And around 6% of Britain's workforce was born abroad. How will the tightening of the immigration rules affect Britain's economy and its cultural diversity? Let's find out what the public thinks.
Well, there is a bit of me that wonders whether we need to do what places like Australia do, which is only allowing the people we actually need. There is no point in having so many people coming here and then being on benefit and then being paid for. I'm disabled myself and I don't have a problem. I'm on benefit, but I do voluntary work. But I think that there's a danger of people coming here just because we have a social care system.
I think it should be controlled, yes. I don't think we should just have an open door policy. But equally, if that figure 2% is accurate, then I don't really see what the problem is,
government's announced plans to beef up the UK border agency to control the number of illegal immigrants. Do you think that's a priority now in the midst of recession, or do you approve of that?
Well, I think migration is certainly not going to help recession, really. I mean, I think there's a whole series of problems with getting finances sorted out and so on.
Definitely not. I think we have bigger financial problems at the moment, so finances first and then maybe migration, because I don't think that's a big issue that needs to be addressed at the moment.
Well, I think immigration needs to be managed properly. I mean, it's a good thing to have a multicultural thing, essentially, but if it's not managed properly, it causes tensions, issues with housing, blah, 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 Definitely it causes issues, and the immigrants themselves are going to be uncomfortable if it's not managed properly and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, for the illegal immigrants, yeah, because they're taking the jobs from people. All right, they're doing the jobs for less money, but our people can't get jobs because the illegal immigrants are taking them up.
6% of the British workforce are migrants, that is people born abroad. How do you think the limiting of immigration might affect those people and the jobs they do?
Difficult to know. My wife's Polish, actually. My wife was born in Poland, but has been here over 50 years. So maybe I'm a little bit biased in that approach. I think we live in a world where the boundaries, certainly when I was a kid, people didn't travel and move around in the way they do now. So I think you've got to be more open to people moving from nation to nation. Again, the main issue, I think, is what the country can support, and then there's a lot of arguments what the country can and cannot support. It's really a difficult question to answer.
Most of the people call immigrants are actually born around the corner to me and went to school with my kids. So I don't think the immigration problem is a problem at all.
Or you would see a big gap in the market for lower paid jobs, I would say, for I can't find my words, the minimum wage jobs. You would see a gap in those jobs, I think. Yeah, definitely.
It would not improve because of a lot of migrants that are working. No one would be taking the jobs, to be honest, because a lot of people don't want the jobs, and then the migrants come, they will probably take the jobs, so it helps the economy in Britain.
Jobs that are seen as mundane jobs by a lot of people in this that are naturally live in this country have gone to refugees, and they're willing to get stuck in and work hard, and without that I think we could be losing a lot of our workforce.
That's all we've got time for this week. Thank you for joining us. If you've got anything to say yourself, send an email to asimplequestion@presstv.com. That's asimplequestion@presstv.com. Meanwhile, from me, goodbye.